Last note of business, I'd like to say thank you to the many groups and organizations that reached out in anticipation of this hearing today with letters outlining their stances on the issue. I'd like to enter into the record letters to the committee from the American Tort Reform Association, American Property Casualty Insurance Association, the Advanced Medical Technology Association, the Institute for Legal Reform, the International Legal Finance Association, National Association of Manufacturers, Jerry Theododro at the R Street Institute. Without objection, so ordered. And then, okay. I would now like to yield 5 minutes to Ms. Ocasio-Cortez.
Thank you, and I thank for the listing of all the special interests involved in addition in this hearing. Now, when I first heard that the Republican side was going to be calling a hearing on third-party influence in our courts, I was so excited because I thought, finally, we are going to address the biggest scandal in American democracy that we are currently having right now, which is the extraordinary corruption and wholesale purchase of members of the Supreme Court. And I also find it amusing that we just heard from the Republican side, why do we want to talk about this? Because women have lost the right to choose, because Indigenous people have lost rights, because minorities have lost rights, because working people across the country have lost rights due to this level of corruption. And if we're going to talk about third parties, let's talk about the Federalist Society, which has not only had deep ties to Justice Clarence Thomas and his wife Ginny, but has also helped choose judicial nominees for the Republican Party and directed multi-million-dollar media campaigns to confirm them, including a multi-million-dollar media campaign for Justice Alito, who seems to like using the Wall Street Journal as his personal press secretary. But I want to dig into a little bit about the influence here. In 2008, Leonard Leo, who's the head of the, who has ties to the Federalist Society, also organized a luxury fishing trip to Alaska, inviting a billionaire to join, Paul Singer. And when Paul Singer accepted, Leo asked if he could fly Justice Alito on his private jet to Alaska. So right here is Paul Singer, a multi-billionaire and a head of a hedge fund, works in hedge funds. And here is Supreme Court Justice Samuel Alito, AKA one of the justices turning over student loan cancellation, turning over women's rights to choose over their own body, and more. Now, Professor Clark, are you familiar with 5 U.S. Code 13104?
I'm so sorry, 5 U.S.C.
13104.
Is that the new codification of the Ethics in Government Act?
Yes, it's specifically on, and it requires reporting and disclosure requirements to government officials, yes.
Yes.
And I want to draw attention to 13104A2A. This section requires disclosure of the identity of the source, a brief description, and a value of all gifts exceeding minimum value. Professor Clark, are you aware how much the minimal value of gifts was in 2008?
I would guess it would be about $400.
Yeah, a little bit under $335 is the amount of gifts in gifts that Supreme Court justices are allowed to receive, which is actually balling compared to members of Congress. We only are allowed to receive gifts under $50. So the Supreme Court, you can give them free AirPods, you can give them really nice dinners, and they don't have to report any of that. But so we're clear, any gifts above that do need to be disclosed, correct?
Correct.
Yet, according to ProPublica's reporting, Justice Alito was flown on a private jet on this luxury trip, and if he had chartered a similar jet, it would have cost more than $100,000 each way. $100,000. Now, Professor Clark, with the cost of about $100,000 per flight, would Justice Scalia be required to disclose this trip?
I believe you're referring to Justice Alito.
Alito, yes.
And yes, under the Ethics in Government Act, disclosure would be required.
And did he?
My understanding is that he did not.
He did not. So we have a billionaire who runs a hedge fund with business before the court. In fact, we saw several cases before the court. And on top of that, he also had 3 days at a luxury retreat, which would charge over $1,000 a night. And he didn't disclose that either. Now, in the years since, we've actually seen the billionaire who generously sponsored this trip Paul Singer did business before the court at least 10 times in cases where the legal press and mainstream media often covered his role. So it was publicly known that he had business before the court. And in 2014, in fact, Justice Samuel Alito, along with the court, agreed to resolve a vital issue in a decades-long battle between Singer's hedge fund and the nation of Argentina. And do you know if Alito recused himself from this case?
I believe he did not.
He did not recuse himself from this case. And in fact, he used his seat on the Supreme Court after all of this to rule in Singer's favor. And following the decision, Mr. Singer's hedge fund was ultimately paid $2.4 billion because of this ruling. Not a bad return on investment for a fishing trip there. Now, Professor Clark, would a federal judge in a lower court be required to recuse himself?
The gentlelady's time has expired.
May I answer the question, sir?
I think the discretion of the chair, yes, you can answer
Thank
the
you,
question.
sir. Yes, there's a federal statute, I believe it's 28 U.S.C. 455, that does require recusal by both justices and judges under certain circumstances.
Thank you, and I yield back.
Thank you. The chair now recognizes